The next train to arrive at platform 2C will be at 11:10 Northern service from Yorkshire.
You know, the problem with talking about journeys on television these days is that television has rendered the word almost meaningless. Taking 3 steps across the studio floor to place a dish in front of the judges for tasting is not a journey, no matter how emotionally draining it might be for the cookery contestant involved. Cycling for 3 weeks over Alps, Pyrenees and roads rendered all but impassable by nutters in mankinis, now that is a journey. It's also, of course, a slightly simplified description of the Tour de France. And this year, as if to underline the madness and magnitude of the whole enterprise, the annual journey to Paris begins in Leeds. And from there it takes in some of the most spectacular parts of Yorkshire with a Stage 1 tour of the Dales on the way to Harrogate and some serious Pennine climbs on the road from York to Sheffield on Stage 2. The final stage in the UK heads south for a finish on the Mall in London, by way of saying sorry for having chosen God's own country over the capital for this year's Grand Départ.
I feel very excited and very happy. There is such a passion for cycling for the Tour here in Leeds in Yorkshire. I'm really impressed. All the villages with bicycles painted yellow, bunting, French flags, yellow flags. It's very, very impressive.
Now, what started out as the opening weekend of a sporting event has been stretched in all directions and ended up as a 100-day festival of bell ringing, polka dot painting, pulling grand pianos up Crag Vale, and anything else that could be loosely tied to the tour, including record-breaking lengths of homemade bunting. Such has been the community spirit that it feels a bit like London 2012, if London 2012 had included knitting. The enthusiasm even spread to the team presentation, which is usually an event with all the glamour of a school assembly, but in Yorkshire it was turned into a big night out, complete with Grand Départ official theme song. Chris Froome rolled onto the stage as favourite to defend the title he won in Paris last year and complete a hat-trick of wins for Team Sky. But the man who started the winning streak was a ghost at the feast and not a guest. As everybody knows by now, the Tour will start in Britain without Britain's most famous rider. Bradley Wiggins has been left out of the Sky team.
Were you a part of that decision-making process? Were you consulted? Was it your decision, I suppose, is what I'm asking?
No, definitely not. I mean, I had some general input with the director sportif, Nicolas Portal, and Dave would speak to me about certain riders, but it was definitely not my decision.
Well, obviously it's my decision, obviously, and wisely. I think what you do in my job is there are 2 sides to it. One's a logical side, and the other one's an emotional side. And for the past 15 years. I've selected teams, and the way that we've always selected teams and the way I've always selected teams to take us from, let's face it, plucky losers 15 years ago to dominating the world, two Olympic Games, winning 2 Tour de France's. The shift in mindsets from one to the other comes from setting the bar high and at times making some very, very difficult decisions based on we want to try and win. And so for me, the approach to this situation was right. Given all the evidence and the facts and where we're at, the thinking is what team could I select which would give us the best chance of winning? And at this moment in time, Chris is the leader. I don't think there's any denying that. And then having established that, then you work back from there and think actually what would be the best team to support him to try and win. And it's as simple as that, really.
Do you feel like a favourite?
I don't like that word, the favourite.
Well, this time last year you most certainly were, and you rode like a favourite, and you stamped your authority all over the race. Are you in the same kind of place?
For myself personally, physically and mentally, I feel as if I'm in the same kind of form that I was in last year, for last year's tour. But the way I look at it is I'm here as a contender, a realistic contender, the defending champion. I've got the backing of a fantastic team, and even more, we've got the privilege of having a home send-off, which is massive for us.
Stage 1 starts out like a school trip. A group of 198 herded off to Harwood House for a dose of British heritage before the flag drops and the race begins. There'll be a collective nod of respect in the direction of Lizzie Armitstead's house as the race hits Otley, but no doffing of headgear for the ride through Ilkley. Hats for spectators are optional. Once the peloton passes through Skipton, they'll be into the Yorkshire Dales National Park, where the towns thin out and the scenery takes over. The first climb of the day is the Côte de Cray, better known as Kidston's Pass to the locals. Then it's on to Wensleydale to introduce the French to the concept of cheese making, and the peloton to Buttertub's Pass. At 532 metres, it's the big climb of the day. It should be spectacular, those parts of it that aren't obscured by crowds. At Reeth in Swaledale, the race will mark its most northerly point, not just today but ever, before turning towards home via the third and final climb at Grinton. The ruins of Jervo Abbey and the splendour of Ripon Cathedral will be among the attractions on the run-in that we'll see from the helicopter, but the riders won't on the ground. Then it'll be elbows out for the first sprint of the 2014 Tour in Harrogate. And that sprint will be a rare chance for Mark Cavendish to take the first yellow jersey of the race. If he does, it'll be the first of his career and also make him the first British rider ever to wear it on British roads. So no pressure.
Tell me about stage one. It's an unusual opening sprinter stage, isn't it? It's testing and the finish is complex. What do you make of it?
Yeah, it's the same for everybody, that's the thing, you know. It does offer some launch pads for attacks. But it also provides a straight running for the sprinters as well. So if the teams can be their control, it should be a sprint. Like I said before, it's the same for everybody. Everybody has to work the tactics around different circumstances in parkours, and hopefully it'll be a good race at the end, and we're putting a good show for the organisers and spectators here in Harrogate.
Now, down at the start in Leeds, huge crowds were expected, and huge crowds materialised. Ned Boulting was among them.
Well, to say that excitement levels in Leeds have reached fever pitch would normally be something of an exaggeration, but in this case I will go with that line, because the Grand Départ is just a few minutes away after what feels like years of anticipation. I've been travelling up and down from Yorkshire regularly over the last weeks, and it is quite genuinely extraordinary how the county has taken to this race and the amount of efforts they've gone to welcome the Tour de France. It's here now, and all morning from 6 o'clock onwards, the trains pulling into Leeds station have just been disgorging hundreds and thousands of people who are now, well, pretty much here, looking forward to seeing the whole shenanigans pass in front of their eyes. The publicity caravan's here, parked up round the corner. The riders are here in the team buses, just waiting to sign on. And the race, as far as I'm concerned, as far as all these people here for the Grand Départ in Leeds are concerned, is ready to go.
And very shortly afterwards, it went. Now, the rollout is always a ceremonial rather than actual start to a stage, but this was more ceremonial than most, because it took the peloton out to Harewood and into the grounds of Harwood House, where the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge and Prince Harry were waiting to greet them. Lots of dodgy-looking helmet hair in the peloton as they all doffed their hats for the national anthems. First in the royal reception, the four British riders in the race: Mark Cavendish, Geraint Thomas, Chris Froome, and 21-year-old Simon Yates making his debut for Orica Greenedge. The Red Arrows performed a fly past, with the red, white and blue Vapor Trail doing diplomatic double duty for the nation of the race and the Grand Départ. And once the royal scissors had been delivered on a cushion and put to use on the race ribbon, the 198 riders rolled back out of the grounds and onto the open road, where Tour director Christian Prudhomme dropped the flag.